Welcome back to NARAL's The Morning After. I'm Kelly.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Pat.
Yeah, as you might have noticed, none of us are Gabriel Mann. Our comms director.
We're doing a great job of not being Gabriel Mann.
Yeah, I'm not a 6'2" ginger man.
No, not yet.
Maybe in my next life.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Sorry, Pat. So, this week we're doing something a little different. We're having two guest comedians, also a lawyer and a proto-lawyer. And then I guess because I'm associated with stand-up people, Gabe has decided to make me host because I know more than he does. Although fun fact, Gabe, and he's going to hate that I've said this, in 4th grade, he did stand-up for his talent show, and he did terribly.
What a crumb. Oh, I didn't know that.
And he talked to me about how he would consider doing stand-up again, but not in front of anybody he knows. So if he ever does stand-up, he's going to drive to Indianapolis to do it.
I think that's great. Do a destination, fly to Austin, Texas, do 5 minutes, make a vacation because,
I really wanted him to do it when he was in New Orleans, but we didn't have enough time.
Oh, that would have been great. New Orleans is a great comedy city.
I know. He go hang out with other Columbus comics.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah.
So why are you guys here this week?
This week?
I mean, specifically, why did I invite you on this?
Oh, okay. So I think we want to get into all the garbage that's happened these past few weeks.
Yeah.
We got this Aziz Ansari stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
We have this horrible fetal remains ritual bill that's coming out of the Ohio Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've also got some new morality council.
Health and Human Services nonsense, but we'll get into that. So you guys are both on the Stand Up for Choice show that's coming up in February. Well, you're going to be hosting.
I'll be hosting, and then Brooke is actually on our May show.
Okay.
Yeah, our headliner for the February show is Kate Sedgwick, who is a comic from DC.
Oh, neat.
We're really excited to bring.
Is she from Columbus, or you just happened to bring her?
No, we met through some Whiskey Bear stuff about 2 years ago, and she came and saw one of the Stand Up for Choice shows, and then was like, "Next time I'm in Columbus, I want to be on this."
Nice.
And so yeah,
very cool.
Actually, quick correction on that. I'm on the August Stand Up for Choice because
I'm going to
be in San Diego talking about queer stuff.
Very cool.
In
That's
May.
right.
So again, pushing my liberal queer agenda on the national level, not just in Ohio. So,
but you've been on Stand Up for Choice before.
I have. I'm a frequent flyer, and I love going. It's a really inspiring night. I feel like I leave really inspired, whether I told jokes about my labia or not, which is refreshing, frankly.
So we're coming up on 2 years of Stand Up for Choice.
Almost?
It'll
be 2 years in May, and I also have to make a quick correction because I said Kate Sedgwick, who's actually headlining our May show, and it's Catherine Jessup who's headlining this show.
You're a mess.
I know.
Patches,
Batting 1,000. Catherine Jessup from DC. Who
don't
is
even try to use a baseball metaphor to butch yourself up.
I haven't seen baseball in 5 years.
What's a baseball? So,
but 2 years in May. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. So February benefits NARAL Pro Choice Ohio. It'll be the 20th at Ace of Cups.
Yep.
And what time does that show start?
So doors open at 7:30, and then we'll start the show at 8.
Don't get there before 7:30; they won't let you in.
Yeah,
and it's cold.
You'll stand out in the cold, and it's not fun. So 7:30, doors open.
Any anticipation of anti-choice protesters this time?
I don't know. I haven't had death threats or anything this time, but of course the last time I had death threats, they didn't show up anyways. I mean, 7:30 on a weeknight is late for them.
It's true. I mean, they're pretty fair weather as far as even just protesting outside the local clinics. So
I feel like you need to spend a lot of time. I mean, I don't know, but I feel like outlining photographs of dead fetuses takes up a lot of time, stenciling that. And I know they use a lot of glitter. And
can you imagine?
A lot of time.
Can you imagine being that Staples employee that has to print that?
I mean, I'm assuming one of them owns a Kinko's. That's the only thing I can come up with because I feel like if I worked at that Kinko's and that came in, I'd be like, oh my gosh, we lost it. And I would just print a bunch of pictures of RuPaul and give them to them oversized or something just to.
Oh, sorry. Was this not your order?
Oh my God. I thought you wanted 8 seasons of Drag Race on DVD. Is that what you wanted? Shoot.
That's awesome. So yeah, Stand Up for Choice, February 20th, benefits NARAL Pro Choice Ohio. It'll be a lot of fun. I don't think I've missed one ever. Weird. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah, they're always a blast.
Yeah, they are. So yesterday, Senate Bill 28 passed in the Senate. This is the fetal remains bill. We've talked about this before, but essentially what it boils down to is if a person just elects to have an abortion, it would require that they either cremate or bury the fetal remains. This would incur like exponentially more costs as far as like the procedure goes. There's a form that you have to fill out what you choose, and if you don't choose, it still has to be done. It's some kind of like weird catch-22 form, of course.
Super detailed and really well thought out.
Yeah. People who clearly know how to write law were writing this law, and by that I mean they did not.
And just to, talk about just like the emotional torture aspects of this too. Like, could you imagine having to get an abortion because of a major complication and then having to go through all this nonsense? I mean,
there's been like something in committee about expanding it to miscarriages, to make it even more horrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that I know in other states, I read a really interesting article about funeral director associations who are very against this bill. And this is a perfect example of something
It's a waste of their time.
It's a huge waste of their time and a huge waste of their resources, because the practicality of this disgusting attempt at guilting women who choose their constitutional right to choose in the penumbras and the fundamental rights, Google it. The point of this is that from a business perspective, it is terrible. And that's what I don't understand. You are forcing, funeral directors don't want to do this. This is an incredible cost. And if the mothers can't afford it, they're still going to have to do it. So
it's going to be eaten by the clinic.
Right. So it's and they don't want to do it. So again, these are folks who are pro-business, pro-Ohio businesses. Listen to the businesses in your community who don't want this shit. They don't want it.
And I mean, it's not like funeral directors are exactly like a liberal agenda.
No, they're actually this like weird group of like old white dudes,
mostly
which is so rare. Yeah. I know it's really strange that people in power are old white dudes. But listen,
would you consider funeral directors in power?
I would, yeah, in their business.
Yeah,
it's a monopoly.
Yeah,
we might actually have like shadowy cabals of funeral directors pulling the strings, and
that's in
politics. But
all I'm saying is, old straight cis white dudes in the state house, listen to the other old cis straight white dudes. You don't even have to listen to the people who want to protect their own bodies and their right to choose if like you don't want to, because you clearly can't. Listen to the other people like with you at Ponderosa this Sunday. Like, listen to them, because I don't understand. Like, that's all you need to do.
Where is there still a Ponderosa?
I don't know. I was trying to think of something Midwestern. Oh, wait a minute. No, Bob Evans. That's the thing here, right? Bob Evans is the thing. Yeah. I just recently was dragged to a Bob Evans, and I apologize on behalf of Ohioans. I'd never been there. A lot of old white dudes.
Yes. I used to work at a Cracker Barrel.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Still never been one of those.
Oh, I actually love Cracker Barrel. I'm not sorry.
Don't apologize. Bring that liberal agenda in. You know what I mean? Fight it. So
they were so disappointed that I wasn't going to college, but that was because I was still in high school. Yeah, so this bill was like, with regards to like cremating, like if you have an abortion at 8 weeks, there's not exactly a lot of tissue. There's definitely not any bone to actually cremate. So you're trying to burn 3 ounces of tissue where there will not be any ashes to scatter or to put anywhere. So it really is just a waste of time and resources. And
it's like they hate science. Is that?
Yeah, science and women. This is
science
not
and
news.
Women. I mean, they really must hate female scientists. Like, they just must run away.
Bummer.
Yeah, they run away like my racist mom crosses the street when a black man's on the street. They just run away from scientific women.
Isn't that just a miserable time in an 8th grade science class where their teacher just picked on them ruthlessly the entire semester?
You don't understand biology, Thomas.
Like an origin story of what ruined it for them.
Yeah, just Mrs. Smith just would not let them live down that they mixed up kinetic and potential energy again.
Incidentally, my 12th grade biology teacher's name was Mrs. Smith.
Oh,
she was awesome.
Like it was they had this like lab partner and they were super attracted to her, but she was like a little smarter than them, and they were like, "Oh my God, Karen's so hot." And then like Karen like got a better grade and then slept with Jimmy, who was the jock.
She's not that hot.
They just never let it go. Yeah, and then they joined a meninist group, and it's just been downhill ever since.
See, I think you're mixing up like people who grew up in the 50s and people who grew up now, because there's no one named Karen who's
Nancy. What's a nice
I knew somebody in middle school named Nancy.
Yeah.
She's the first I actually had this conversation with Gabe earlier. She's the one who incorrectly informed me what an abortion was in 6th grade.
What did you call it? What did she tell you it was?
She turned around. She's like, "It's a shot to kill a baby," which sounds way more convenient than what it actually is.
That's more convenient.
I mean, a shot versus like a procedure. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Let's get on that, science. This is great.
All right, we need to.
That makes it sound like a gun. You're just like, I need a shot to kill a baby.
Oh no!
Yeah, actually, you know what? Maybe the old sister
it's a
white men would be
vaccine.
behind that.
You've been vaccinated against childhood.
They would like that. Anything that involves the guns, they'd probably be pro that.
Oh no. So, going on to this Aziz Ansari. Jesus Christ. So, Aziz Ansari, it came out on babe.net, which is this tabloid that nobody has ever heard of before this.
Yeah.
Any .nets, I'm always like Christian website.
Beliefnet.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Babe.net came out with a expose against Aziz Ansari, saying that he had sexually assaulted, sexually harassed, basically made somebody very, very uncomfortable in the process of them having a date. And a lot of people are unhappy with this because Aziz Ansari is generally seen as this like feminist champion comedian because he talks about how dudes are terrible. Thoughts?
I think lots. Yeah. I don't know where we'd like to start.
I think both truths can exist, and that's what frustrates me. Is that my personal experience with a lot of men. Usually sometimes the ones that are the worst are the guys that also say like nice guys finish last, man. Okay, so that's seriously, you know what I mean? So I don't think it doesn't need to be one or the other. He could have been involved in this extremely uncomfortable and extremely inappropriate interaction, and he could also see himself as a feminist. That's the problem. And that's what I struggle with a lot with men, because they'll often come into a conversation and they'll start with, but I'm a feminist. And I'm like, I don't care. That's not relevant to this particular situation. You introduced me on stage, and instead of giving my credits, you said, I would like to blank her. I'm trying to help out Gabe, so when he edits this, it's not too much, right? That's my introduction. I'm very happy for you that you identify as a feminist, but that is not reflected in your words.
My favorite thing for stand-up is introducing a man as the lovely instead of the talented or the funny.
Oh, I like that. Fetching.
Yes.
The very fetching.
The first time I did stand-up, and this one made me think to people at home, I was like, I got to introduce Dan Loper, and I was like, the beautiful and lovely Dan Loper.
I mean, he's a lot of things.
Those are not two that I would use.
I don't know if I would necessarily use lovely.
Sorry, Dan.
Handsome, but not lovely.
He's all right, I guess.
Yeah,
George
chiseled. Fact.
No, he is not. Okay, I'm not going to keep talking.
Let's just talk all the crap about these Columbus comedians.
I believe they already had to edit out like half of a whiskey deep because I did that last time I was on that podcast. So let's not do it to NARAL too.
No,
but
definitely not.
So yeah, come on, Pat. What's your thoughts as a white cis man about sexual assault?
Dig in, Pat. No one like you has ever dug in on this.
Yeah, never spoken on this before. So I have a couple thoughts. One, I'm glad you brought up babe.net because I also want to throw out a little bit of a shame on babe.net for publishing this and just letting this poor author just kind of flap out in the breeze on her own.
Not only that, but they covered look at all the other news outlets that covered our expose, as if that's not a weird thing. That's a weird thing to do. Be like, look at how much coverage we got of our expose. Oh my gosh, you're talking about sexual assault, y'all.
Right. And they, obviously it's just a blog that didn't review anything she wrote. There's no, this platform has no journalistic integrity because they didn't edit this thing in any way, shape, or form. They obviously didn't give her any sort of support. And so now she has this article out there that people are ripping to shreds and using against her.
And against the movement in general.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, if she had gone to, something like the New York Times or the Washington Post, an editor would have read that and worked with her before putting it out there.
BuzzFeed. I mean, you don't even need to go to the bastions.
Right.
You could have gone to literally.
Even Jezebel.
Huff Post might have even done it better.
Medium?
You're just just the bottom of the barrel.
At least get a .com. But
yeah,
so
go ahead.
Well, no, so I'm a little upset with them, and then also I'm really upset with everybody that has immediately jumped in with this whole, well, it doesn't sound like it meets the legal threshold for sexual battery or sexual assault or rape, which is
That's such a low bar. Like, oh, it's gross, but it's not illegal.
right. And, it's probably people in the legal profession that'll be the first to tell you that, hold on, the only threshold for right and wrong in our society is not the
law.
courts.
No.
Well, and I think that kind of lends itself to the conversation that we've had about like the t-shirts I'm selling for Bravo and Sarnco that say "Stop Booking Rapists" that Kelly is wearing, and you can order one through me. Just email me at bcardis@gmail.com.
We'll have that in the show notes too.
Awesome. But what was so interesting about that is I in all of my online campaign to raise money, someone commented, because it says "Stop Booking Rapists," and commented and said, well, if a police officer wears it, that's going to be confusing. And I was like, well, I don't think I am going to have that problem. But obviously I'm talking about it in terms of booking artists who are rapists. But I responded back and I was like, that's really fascinating. Why did you say that? And he said, well, because that means like stop booking all the rapists. And I'm, in the legal sense, arresting them, booking them. And I said, do you know the studies and the statistics about how few rapists are even arrested or talked to or documented or any of that? Like there's just such, the most liberal, generous study says 40% are reported.
That's less than half.
But then that other studies in more marginalized populations is less than 10%. And that's not even convicted. That's not even there yet. So I think it's really difficult to use the legal standard when we see in statistics all the time how incredibly poor those statistics reflect.
Well, if we're even using the legal standpoint, like look at all the anti-abortion laws that have been passed in the last 5 years. Are we going to really think those are moral laws? No, like that's not going to be our measure of right and wrong. Like that's not what the law is for. It's just a very niche, very just black and white thing usually.
Yeah. And you can still act abysmally without breaking any laws.
Yeah, you can be a jerk and still be legally okay.
Right. So I just don't think that's and I'm not saying that's not a good conversation to have. I think that is a good conversation to have, but I think the way people are coming into this in the context of the Me Too movement is making people go like, well, it's not that bad. And I was like, okay, that's great that it's not that bad. We can have that conversation, but it can be part of a larger conversation about our sexual culture and how we don't need to stratify wrongs.
I think in a lot of ways it's a divide between like older and younger generations too, especially like second wave versus third wave feminists. Like it's not that bad. It's not actual rape. And like, okay, yes, but that doesn't mean that it's good.
It's not actual. Right. And like marital rape was legal until
it's still legal in some states.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
again,
illegal here. Sorry.
Not a good line of right and wrong.
Right. So we're not, we can't really use that. And I don't think we should use the law, certainly not the past law, as a bastion of our morality.
Yeah. And I think people who there's just like a tweet I saw that's like the people who are like, well, if that's sexual assault, then everybody I know has been sexually assaulted. And A, yes, B, you're almost there to the point.
So close to a breakthrough.
I love the argument of like, well, can I just not even flirt anymore? I was like, if you don't know the difference between flirting and sexual harassment or harassment, which is how I like to say it, then we have way bigger problems. Like if you can't read a woman's cues,
you specifically are not allowed to flirt anymore.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, congratulations, you're off the island. Like you're not allowed. But I find it really fascinating. Like, I'm just gonna not flirt anymore. I was like, yeah, stay in your mom's basement.
Yeah. We're not allowed. You don't touch a woman. Don't look at a woman. Don't even acknowledge that women exist anymore.
Yeah.
You're fine.
And then get elected to the state house, and here we are.
Great.
Shots fired at Matt Huffman.
Sorry about that. Okay. What was I?
So Brooke, I'm gonna let you take the lead on this since you actually know more than I do. Recently, something has come up in the Health and Human Services, a morality commission.
Yeah, so I'm really plugged in more to things on the federal level than the state level, and Pat has been really helpful for me and Kelly on keeping me abreast of the horrors happening in the Ohio State House. But just something to keep in mind that Health and Human Services is a new committee, a division within them, the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division. I had to read it because it was so disgusting, but here's what's happening. What they're trying to do is create this division within the Civil Rights Division that says if you have a religious objection, religious or moral objection, which is even more convoluted because if you have a religious or moral objection to a procedure. As an employee of a hospital or medical facility, you should have the right to not participate and not be punished. So this came from a nurse. I'm going to go with, I think she was in Texas because yes. And she had to participate in an abortion.
Was it an abortion or was it like a D&C miscarriage?
I don't know.
It's the same procedure.
Abortion procedure, right? So it could have been that. It could have been miscarriage. And she was so traumatizing. She didn't want to participate in it, but the hospital forced her to. I picture some sort of like gunpoint situation, but liberals don't have guns, so probably not. But they forced her with a squirt gun.
In Texas, it was probably a dildo.
That's true, probably. So what's scary to me about this is what's scary to me about this is these are going to be used to not only have people not provide abortions, it'll also affect transgender clients, transgender patients, LGBTQ patients. And that to me is extremely scary. And the morality side of it, which is even scarier, is a religious belief is a closely held, sincere belief. That's the definition we use, right? Morality could be anything. You could just choose, right? I morally don't think gay people are real. That's a moral thing. My religion believes in it and I believe in it. And it could be so vague, right? So how do we control that? There's no legal definition for moral like there is for religious. So this is opening the doors wide open for transphobic, homophobic, xenophobic actions by employees to just do really whatever they want, carte blanche, and hide it in the guise of religious and moral freedom.
And this isn't really it will affect urban centers, but it's really going to affect like the more rural outlets, like where things don't have a lot of people, a lot of alternatives.
Right. We're people who tend not to think the gay people exist, like to hang out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they hang out in the urban centers, but the thing is, there's also alternatives. So if they can't get it like at Grant, they could probably get it at OSU or Riverside or like a myriad of other hospitals versus like one county hospital and the next one is like 4 hours away. You're a little bit more limited as to what you can do.
And it's really affecting the most marginalized parts of our population again, right? It's those who are poor, those who are maybe maybe listed not as transgender on any sort of documentation and haven't gone through name changes or haven't started the official transition, whatever that means to folks. So that is going to affect those who are most vulnerable in our communities first.
The thing is, like, you already have the right to refuse to do something. You don't have to marry people if you don't want to. You don't have to if you don't want to do abortions, don't get into abortion care. Don't get into the emergency room. Go be a pediatrician. Like,
right. I mean, if you don't want to treat human beings, don't be a doctor.
Right.
Like anytime I hear someone in the medical community, and I hear a distressing amount of times.
It's because you're dating a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, my boyfriend is a med student. And so occasionally, you meet other doctors and there's some who are just like, yeah, they've got religious objections to the whole concept of, same-sex marriage. And it's just like, if you don't want to treat people, don't be a doctor. You couldn't pick a more awful role in the world for yourself if you don't want to provide care to people. Like, what the hell?
I met a heart surgeon who was retired and was in research. And I asked him why he left surgery. He was very incredible heart surgeon. And he said, I just didn't like dealing with the people. It was too much interaction with people. And I was like, are you kidding? They're on the table. When are you interacting with them?
I mean, I imagine hearts don't talk to you.
I mean, I don't know. This guy was intense, but what I found was so fascinating. I was like, okay, so 10% of your world was interacting with patients, or 20% or whatever it is, and you couldn't handle that, so you left. Good for you.
Yeah.
Leave it. There's research jobs. You could do anything.
I mean, I think a lot of the problem is, at least in the United States, is like people who become doctors don't always get into it for the right reasons in the first place, because it is such a money-making position because of how the United States healthcare is currently set up.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, people aren't getting into the best reasons to begin with.
I guess what scares me the most about anything federal is it can be really, really sweeping. But what scares me the most is how little it'll affect my life and the listeners' lives. Like, I think it's really difficult. There was this incredible study about how liberals and conservatives view pain and harm. And liberals tend to, and this wasn't Democrat, Republican, this is just liberal conservative viewpoints. Liberals tend to feel pain and harm on a community level, and conservatives feel it on an individual and family level. And I think this is a perfect example of something that's really sweeping that I'm feeling on a community level that will never affect me, but I really want it to change.
I mean, you can see that in this, like the testimony and like what we try to do for legislation. Like, we want this to be understood that it will affect you and yours and me and mine and like specific individuals that you know and hold dear, and not just like somebody who lives 6 counties away.
Right. And that really helps with people who think in that conservative mindset. How is this going to affect my family? How is this going to change my personal life, the people close to me? And that's a lot of times why the LGBTQ movement has moved faster than other civil rights movements.
Everybody's got a gay uncle.
Because we are interspersed throughout the population and we're not segregated like so many other marginalized groups.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, if you have like a majority, like let's talk about like Minnesota and their Somali community that is very segregated from the rest of the population. If you have moral objections, quote unquote, against dealing with Somalis or dealing with Muslims, you're going to have a hard time in Minnesota if that's like the majority of this population. Like, what are you going to do if you're Somali and your doctor refuses to treat you because, I don't know, dumb reason?
Well, right. And what is a moral reason? It's just too vague. And again, this administration is demonstrating over and over that they don't care about vagueness, and they don't care about facts, and they don't care about truth.
It does seem interesting that like as the population itself, at least like the young people I know, tend to becoming more socialist, that we're having more anti-socialist at the federal level.
That's interesting.
Return of the Red Scare, I wonder.
Oh, God.
Teenagers are scary.
Yes, but in a delightful way. Except for like that whole eating Tide Pod thing, which old people do too, so whatever.
Old people do it too?
Oh yeah, more old people have died of eating Tide Pods than children.
Yeah, people with dementia, it's a problem.
Who did that? Okay. Who did this get past in marketing at Tide? Like, I believe, okay.
Hey, this is actually probably working great for their marketing. They're getting more coverage than they ever would have otherwise.
That's true. Their product is, I'm terribly allergic to their product, so I think my face would explode. But
I don't use it either.
I'm wondering, yeah, maybe this was all the plan all along. Kill some babies and some elderly folks.
Perhaps. I mean, it does look like it should be a giant gusher.
It does.
Hate that word.
Gusher? Gusher.
Oh. I mean, it
Pat's
does.
leaving.
It does look like candy. And the weird thing is that they had to go out of their way to like
make it look like candy.
Dyes in it to make it look that way. Like detergent's just clear or like milky white when you make it. It's not orange and blue and shiny.
I think it's really weird that people are making foods like candy and sushi that looks like these Tide Pods, but nobody's actually made a giant gusher that looks like a candy, like looks like these. I hate it. It's upsetting.
I think, you know what? I don't even know if Tide Pod was on the agenda, but put it in for the rest of this day because this is it. We're just going to dig in on Tide Pods. I didn't even know this. Have like teenagers died?
I mean,
just...
honestly, teenagers are going to eat whatever they can to get themselves high. So
Fair.
maybe there's something I don't know about these Tide Pods. I'm not going to find out.
I think the Tide Pod challenge for teenagers is you just put it in your mouth until the plastic dissolves. So it's just a lot of YouTube videos of like them sitting there with a Tide Pod in their mouth and then just like and like detergent
foaming
comes out of their mouth. Yeah. Like when you put like,
I mean, this is just like, oh, you've been cursing, so I've been washing your mouth out with soap. Like, it's saving parents a few steps.
That's true. It really is. I don't ever, I mean, like, we weren't that.
You never did the gallon challenge? You never did the cinnamon challenge?
No.
There's so many dumb challenges.
Well, I did both of those.
You did? I'm so grateful.
I have a video of my friend doing the cinnamon challenge.
I'm so grateful I had no friends all the time because I didn't know about these things. It was just me and my stuffed Ernie.
I mean, how do we capitalize?
You know too much.
How do we capitalize on this? How do we turn the Tide Pod challenge into
turning
like
the tide
in like into like an ALS ice bucket type challenge for something good? How do we do that?
I mean, I think already with the population control, I think we're crushing it. How about this? Anyone who does the Tide Pod challenge, one of your family members has to die.
I'm not going to support that, but okay.
That's fine. Like a purge situation.
All right, so let's go back to the Aziz Ansari thing. Just because you guys and I guess, are comedians, how do you feel like comedy in general has changed over the last, like, I don't know, a few years with regards to talking about like sexual assault, rape jokes on stage, etc.? And I know you guys are generally on the same page as I am, and as most of our listeners would be, but I don't know. Let's talk about Columbus comedy drama, I guess.
Well, I guess my thing about anything you joke about is that it has to be.
I mean, your feelings are pretty straightforward.
That's fair, but I think anytime you're talking about sexual assault or rape on stage, I think you have an opportunity. But I think that it is really difficult, and I know talking about difficult topics is something that Pat and I have discussed, and it is a challenge. But if you can talk about it and not make it hack and not make it offensive and actually make it educational, it's incredible. There's an incredible comedian in town, Matt Loxley, who has an amazing story about rape. And it is a TED Talk, but you laugh. It is just fantastic. And I love it. And when he starts that story, I hunker down like a kid at a story time. Like I've seen it so many times, but it's riveting and it's funny and it's heartbreaking and it's amazing.
Matt was on the last Stand Up for Choice, wasn't he?
2 ago. He was the last August one.
Okay.
So I guess for me, and as long as it's not hack and it's respectful, and frankly, you have an opportunity, you have a platform. If you can educate, or if you can enlighten, or if someone can leave and be like, oh, I never thought of something that way, that is just the biggest bonus on top of on top of making an audience laugh.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with like what we talk about, like punching up or punching down. If you're punching down, then you're not doing your job as a comedian, I think.
I love that phrase, and I just learned it, and now it's everywhere. And
it's been in my lexicon for a couple of years.
I love it. I think it's so accurate for what we're talking about. Pat, jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Columbus comedy, I think we are
it's gotten better.
It's gotten better. We're sort of blessed in that we have a lot of comics who are, I think, on the right side of this stuff.
A bunch of queer feminist folks.
We do, yes.
Columbus is gay as F.
Oh yeah, it's like 90% of the reason I moved here. They leave those pride banners up until like October every year.
They take them down for like 2 weeks.
Yeah. Everyone knows who runs Columbus.
Yeah.
Who run the world? Gays.
The queer mafia is real, y'all. Take me out for a whiskey. I'll tell you all about it.
Right.
I'm not in it. I just know about it.
So Columbus comedy, I think, does a lot of things right. It's the stand-up scene as a whole, though, can be kind of insular. And for an industry that makes its money off of, poking holes in things and pushing the envelope and, being outside the realm of acceptability. It's super weird to me how much of the stand-up community as a whole in the country has been resistant to, change, has been resistant to there being more female comics, more comics of color, more LGBTQ comics out there. So it is a weird sort of thing.
Why do you guys think that comedy, at least traditionally, has always been such a white man's game? And like, this is not just like Columbus, but like I'm from Columbia, South Carolina. Everybody I knew there was a white man. Like, it's just kind of what it seems to be.
I mean, I think it is fascinating. I go into all different businesses.
Women aren't funny. Huh.
Women are not funny, first of all. But I go into businesses, all different types of businesses. And every single business I go into when I'm working with women, they're like, I'm the only woman in my lab. I'm the only woman on my team. I'm the only woman in this. And we forget how male-dominated leadership roles are in general. And if you take that corporate analogy and you look at comedy, the people who are in leadership roles are the people getting Netflix specials, right? Like that's the equivalent. And cis straight white men are going to continue to be in power from the structures that we have created in our culture. So I think it is really difficult. And I think on top of that, when a person of color, when an LGBTQ person, when a woman gets to the top, there's this feeling of tokenism, and that's enough. But studies show that nothing about one person at the table who's different than the norm changes anything about the behavior. We need plurality in that to change anything.
Not only that, but we kind of expect this like perfection out of like the token.
Right. So when we have a Cameron Esposito, we're like, okay, we're done. That's good. Got it. Yahtzee. Like, no, that's not enough. There's a million queer folks out there with a million different voices.
I love Tig Notaro.
Just right. So just need a minute. So that's the challenge. And then of course we have the challenges of intersectionality within our movement. So for me, listening to a queer woman of color is going to be a very different experience than listening to a queer white woman. But to people on the outside, they're going to be like, well, we got one queer, so we're good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like people have a hard time relating to women and people of color because we have been socialized at like the white cis male experience is just like default human experience.
Right. They don't want to listen to our pain, but I will tell you about my pain and you will like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like thus far, 2018 has been the year of female rage. Incidentally, I just call it rage.
Yeah, I think it's just real.
I'm just angry.
Just real ragey.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, I feel like once you do get audiences, in front of female comics, in front of comics of color, in front of LGBTQ comics, they typically, by and large, react positively to them. It's the problem, I think, is still rooted in the industry itself, especially when you're looking at like the club scene. When you have people who are booking just to put butts in seats, they don't take
Name
risks
recognition.
ever.
Yeah.
It's all name recognition, which is only benefiting a bunch of straight white guys that are already established. And I think that's one of the things that Amber and I are so proud of with Stand Up for Choice is that we're able to get crowds of 150, sometimes 200 people.
Honestly, the Stand Up for Choice shows are my favorite. Like they are the most fun. The audiences are the most fun. Like they react the best, I think, out of all the audiences I've ever seen. And it's not like that's a small
Right. We get these large audiences that rival shows in traditional comedy setups, but we never had any of the roadblocks put in front of us that a traditional comedy club would put up. We've been very lucky to have Ace of Cups, who was just like, oh yeah, totally, do whatever you want. Just total creative controls up to you guys. We were very lucky in that the show kind of took off right away, so we never had to worry about not having enough people to justify there being another show. And I think it just does kind of prove that once you break out of the traditional comedy industry, here's your opener, here's your feature, here's your headliner at the Funny Bone, you really can do these things.
So shout out to the traditional comedy club Go Bananas, who has booked me this weekend as a feature. So I feel like that clubs are getting there, and I feel
they're starting to.
They are,
up.
And I'm super excited. It's my first time featuring at Go Bananas, and it is exciting for that to happen. And I don't think I was booked because I was a woman, right?
Yeah, I hope not.
And you know what? Even if I am booked because I was a woman once, which it was this weekend, it doesn't make up for the 1,000 other times I wasn't booked because we already had a woman on this show, so we had enough diversity. So like it doesn't balance.
I love when the Stand Up for Choice shows are just all ladies. Actually, my favorite thing recently is that An Evening with the Berkeys, which is a local show, their February show is a lineup of all ladies. And I think that's just how it happened. I don't think it was necessarily intentional on their part. That's just how the cards.
My favorite is an all-lady show that doesn't have to be like, it's lady face time, whatever the hell they call it. I just want it to be a show. And if it happens to be an all-male lineup, we don't have to like throw a penis parade. And Nikki Winkleman does great shows on Tuesdays with Mac and Winks, and she did a Holla Dames show and it was all women. But then she did a Holla Dudes show, and it was great because she was like, "Look at this crazy lineup, all men. What do you mean? We've never done this," and poked fun at herself for pointing out those gender lines. So
we're hoping to have Nikki Winkleman on the show soon too.
Yeah. She's going to
be 38 weeks pregnant.
She is on Stand Up for Choice.
Yes. She's going to be 38 weeks.
38 weeks pregnant, stumping for abortion.
Yeah.
Oh my
been there.
Fantastic.
So I think that's the exciting thing. That is what's happening in Columbus, but I've also seen it reflected in a lot of other comedy communities in Indy and in Austin and in the other places I've been lucky enough to go. And there is this push, not to push cis, straight, white men out, but to invite more diverse voices to the table to make a more robust experience for the audience, because that's the end consumer. And that's who everyone should be thinking about when they go on stage. I think there's a lot of comedians that don't. I think that it's about them, but I think it's a real opportunity to say, what do I want the audience to leave with?
Yeah, I think it's really frustrating when people find female comedians to not be funny, and I think it's a lack of empathy on their part a lot of the times, because it's like, oh, I don't relate to female experiences. Well, then you're just not listening, or maybe you just lack empathy. You're just not
do you not
interested.
have like a mom or a sister? I love.
Do you not know any women?
Yeah, I do love those when they're like, with the whole Trump thing and grabbing him by the what, and all these senators were like, well, I can't look my daughter in the eyes anymore. Jason Chaffetz, I think, said that.
Could you before?
Yeah, and also like, Kate, do you need to have a daughter or a sister or a mother who like is a woman with a vagina to be like, wow, I'm just not on the same page with rape anymore as I was before. Now that I have a daughter, like, no, just be a human and don't worry about how many women you know. Like, well, I know 5 women, so I'm against 5 rapes.
That probably goes back to like conservatives only care about them and theirs versus like communities as a whole.
Right. It's the age old Republican thing. I mean, Rob Portman just hated the gays until like, oops, surprise, gay kid, and then he was like, oh well, fuck, now I gotta be all about gays. Oh, I did it. Oh, well, sorry.
Here's the deal about that, which I love, is that then the gays were like, yay, Portman. And it's like, no, he's still terrible. Like we compartmentalize a lot of times. And I think a lot of communities do. And what we have to remember is that even if he's moving forward on something like, making
2 steps forward, 3 steps back,
but making like the tiniest jazz square, just a little baby step, forward, you don't get any points for that from me because you're still hurting so many people within my community.
Was it before or after 2015 that Portman decided to not be terrible about gay rights?
I don't know, but he's still like anti-healthcare, which means that he's against, like the entire gay community because there's still this whole like AIDS crisis thing. So like if you're against healthcare, you can't ever call yourself pro-LGBTQ.
No, I mean, you can't call yourself like just like pro-human if you're anti-healthcare. Just like just start there.
I'm just making a face because I'm sad. I turned on the news this morning and I was just like listening to NPR and then I was just screaming things in the shower and I was like, I need a break. Like I need to turn on some music or something. So I apologize. If anyone listening is really like needs a minute, go back to the Tide Pod part of this and re-listen, and then you can jump back into the horrors that are country and state right now.
Yeah. Nate and I. We should just start doing that on our podcast. We should like, here's the weird garbage thing that's happening.
You should do weird garbage thing. I think that's a really healthy, like self-care moment of like, you know what I mean?
Idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nate and I have started watching The National, which is like the nightly Canadian news.
Okay, it's not the sad band. Okay.
No, it's not the sad band, which might be named after the Canadian news thing. It's their like nightly news hour every night. And it's fantastic because they cover American stuff with this kind of like weird side eye. Not like aggressive side eye because they're Canadians and they're very polite. But then they also cover just like all these wonderful things that are happening in Canada. And I can just sit there and think, that's only 300 miles away. It's just a short drive and a bit of a swim. And I'm there.
You're a great swimmer too. Yeah. I feel like that's it is really important to obviously diversify your portfolio and also take care of yourself. But I also think it can be really difficult when you get bogged down to not take action. And I know that, your organization, Kelly, does so much work and works so hard on digestible moments of investment and engagement. And I really value that. So even if it's a volunteer night, or I know you're trying to get those craft nights going, girl, you get it. Craft nights.
I'm doing the best I can.
What's the cat's name?
Crafternoon. Oh, Chunky the Craft Cat.
Chunky the Craft Cat. Yeah. I think that is so excellent because I think sometimes it can be really overwhelming and, thoughts about like testifying or, making these big grand gestures. Sometimes you can just come and do a phone bank for a night and that can really.
I make my phone banks fun. I promise.
It could do a lot. And then you feel fulfilled, but you also don't feel drained because you also have to take care of yourself. And there's a lot going on in this world right now.
Definitely. I forgot what I was going to go for next.
Chunky the Craft Cat.
He is a great cat. He's so old and so chunky.
What is his favorite craft?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Calavera.
Does he eat popsicle sticks?
No, but there is a locker there that is filled with catnip toys, and it's not allowed to be open because Chunky gets into them.
Get it, Chunky. Feel you. Feel you, girl.
Is this Woolly Craft?
Holy Craft.
Woolly Craft is my drag name.
Oh my God. I'm not up on crafting.
You can learn a thing. Maybe that's your New Year's goal.
I could try.
Yeah.
I could try.
So
I'm wearing bootcut jeans right now. I don't know if I could.
Yikes.
I probably can't glue anything to anything.
The jeans I'm wearing are ugly, but they are fleece lined, so I don't care. This coming Tuesday, we are probably going to see the return of SB 145, which is the method ban. That would ban the most common procedure in second trimester abortions. There was a hearing for that earlier this week, I think, or maybe I don't know. I'm mixing up my bills because there's just so many.
I guess what I don't really understand is how anyone can believe the justification for these bills. And you know a little bit more about our opponents and what they are really going for in the justification. What are they saying? Because I don't even understand from a constitutional perspective how this is illegal.
Well, it's already been blocked in Indiana, so it's not.
Okay, great. Yeah, see, awesome.
So there was proponent testimony early this week. And there's going to be opponent testimony next Tuesday. So that's going to be us and our supporters and
Great.
people who are against the bill. What they're saying is ridiculous.
Obviously, that is the caveat. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not. I just want to know
No, I got
the
it.
ridiculousness.
We're not going to be convinced by it.
Right. I'm like,
Well, so the director of Ohio Right to Life, one of the suggestions she had, I guess like what she was like wanting as a solution is perinatal hospice. So if you elect not to terminate in the second trimester, this is something that or like elect not to terminate at all, and you have like a fatal flaw with the pregnancy, so like it's not going to survive. You can opt not to terminate and go to perinatal hospice, which is just basically kind of like preparing for like what's going to happen, like the sad outcome, basically going through the rest of your pregnancy and then like having like labor and then saying goodbye.
Does she realize how dangerous that is?
I mean, it's certainly dangerous for some people, and some people do elect to go for perinatal hospice. What I don't understand is the people who don't want this. Like,
right. You should never force someone to go through something that traumatic, emotional.
I cannot
and possibly
imagine
dangerous.
being like 15, 16 weeks pregnant, finding out this thing's going to die before I give birth, and then still having to carry the pregnancy to term. That's
It's that to me.
it's cruel.
Is a unique type of torture.
Yeah.
It's absolutely torture.
So
I don't even.
So that's one of the humane options that Ohio Right to Life is offering instead of a second trimester procedure.
What a generous organizational option.
Yeah. The other option for a second trimester procedure is to induce labor, which you have to do in a hospital, and takes a lot longer than like the 7 to 15 minutes that a second trimester procedure normally takes. So let's go through like, you know, the trauma of labor, which I don't recommend.
Yeah,
I don't recommend.
Let's just put people in pain that they don't need to be in. Like,
I was mostly just bored, to be honest.
Anyone who's had to go through any sort of gynecological medical procedure understands the absolute nightmare it is. It's a nightmare. It is a nightmare. It is in so many ways. I want all of these legislators to have to go to an OBGYN's office and strap into those stupid stirrups and just sit there for 10 minutes and lay there on the paper and process what's about to happen and just sit there and be anxious and a mess. And then add on top of it any other things that are going on in your life. Like it is just, it's terrible. How could you possibly want to make anything more painful for someone like that?
Yeah, labor is just mostly leaking fluid.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross. Use of the word. You're crushing it with the words today. Fluid. Gusher.
Oh.
I feel like it's like I'm a golden retriever with too much peanut butter in his mouth. Whenever you say those words, I'm like, I can't.
Whenever Gabe makes me test the mic, I usually just make banana sounds. I'm just. You're welcome, Gabe.
You're very good at banana sounds. That is, again, unique hidden talents of Kelly. I'm learning so much about that, and she procreates like a boss. Her baby's perfect.
Good, because I don't know if I'll have another one ever.
That's totally fine, and that's your right.
Yeah, as it turns out,
that's your darn right.
Yes. So yeah, the Handmaid's Tale bill. Well, I guess that's what we're calling it. The Handmaid's Tale bill, SB 145, the method ban, will be back in in the House on Tuesday for opponent testimony. Come hang out if you want to. It's really gonna be real frustrating. Maybe Pat will wear one of his. What letter did you have last time for Stop the Bans? N. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was with us when we spelled out Stop the Bans, and he was the only male.
I think it would be fun if he like had to like bend down and tie his shoe and would just say "Stop the bars" just for a minute.
Yeah, I would really like to just get like a whole alphabet of t-shirts and spell out a bunch of weird things.
Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be to distract from the bigots.
Bots. Spell out bots. Spell out BS, as it turns out. All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Anything you got coming up?
As far as things I have coming up, I'll be at Woolly Craft.
That'll be on the 24th, right? 25th?
Yes, I'll be there on the 24th.
Yeah, I'll be in Cincinnati. I'm real sad about it.
That's okay. But if you're in Cincinnati this weekend and you want to come to Go Bananas, I'll be featuring an opening for John Hanley. But then the real thing I want to plug, the queer agenda that's keeping going, is at 4 String Brewing in Grandview on Monday, February 5th. I'll be headlining a benefit for Equality Ohio. And Equality Ohio is an organization. It's the only statewide LGBTQ organization in the state of Ohio, and it does incredible work doing intersectional work with queer folks, gender nonconforming and trans folks of color. We're doing a really good job of interconnecting a lot of the marginalized communities. So please come out. $1 from every Hilltop logger will be going to Equality Ohio, and a bunch of other ways we'll be raising money there. So please, if you are free on a Monday and want to come drink with me, come out and buy me a beer.
I do want to highlight the show you're doing at Holy Craft. That is a project of Christine Horvath, who runs Babe Roar.
BabeRoar.com.
Yeah.
It's great.
You want to talk to us more about Babe Roar? Or Pat, tell us more about Babe Roar.
So Christine just launched the website a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Something like that.
And it's a fantastic showcase of performers, makers, creators who just are not cishet white dudes.
Mhm.
And it's a really, really fantastic website. The store is super awesome too. So check that out.
Oh, they have the most whimsical cards.
Oh, it's so good.
So many whimsical
Christine's a
cards.
local comedian as well.
She is.
And she has been on Stand Up for Choice as well, I think?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. She's been on twice.
Okay.
Good friend of ours, fantastic performer.
Yes.
And yeah, so BabeRoar.com. They've also got a Facebook page. It's great. And it's got a lot of work from other Columbus comics and then kind of like Columbus idea leaders and creative types that you probably don't get a chance to hear from.
Yeah. And do you have anything coming up, Pat, other than Stand Up for Choice?
I do. Stand Up for Choice.
What roast are you doing?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I was like, wait, what do I
your
have
schedule.
besides class?
Law student life.
Yeah, oh God, working
Ew.
full time and then going to school at night has turned me into just a garbage person.
I'm Pat Deering, and I'm going to take a break from performing. Liar!
So Tuesday, February the 6th, we have the Roast of the Disney Sidekicks, in which I am playing Zazu.
You know,
from
when I first saw
Lion
it, so
King.
good.
When I first saw that, I was like, he'll be a good LeFou, but you would also be a good Zazu.
I feel like
That's
you were
me.
destined to be a Disney sidekick, Matt.
The
I think
only-
it'd be great. Like they're just like maybe Smee. Who knows?
The only gay
Yeah, you're
African
right.
hornbill and major domo to lions,
Who's
Zazu.
who's Zazu in the movie, like the voice actor?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Who? Yeah.
Why aren't you Timon or Pumbaa? I feel like you're a good Nathan Lane character. Because Timon is.
Is it
Nathan-
because he's
Oh,
gay?
it's
No.
Is that why, Kelly? Is it because he's a gay? Yes.
No, but okay. I just thought he might be a good Timon, and he and Nathan Lane seem like they might be friends.
That'd be something to try. Just like doing both of them.
Yeah.
Maybe Timon and Pumbaa. But then the week after that is like the Tuesday closest to Valentine's Day,
The 13th.
which is the My Better Half show at Backstage Bistro.
Okay.
And it's where local comics have to turn the mic over to their significant other, who then does that
yeah.
comic set. So Nate will have to do 5 minutes of my material, and I cannot wait.
That is awesome.
I've always thought it'd be fun for me and Alex to do those shows, but whatever. Mostly because I want to hear him talk about my uterus.
I think that'd be great. Yeah. I should just find a random person on the street to tell my jokes. I think that's what I'm gonna do next time.
Yeah, we could always just do a comedy karaoke show sometime.
I really want Nate to have to do all of my angry jokes about Scruff.
What is Scruff, Pat?
Scruff, it's like Grinder, except you have to like have facial hair to be on it or something.
Oh, okay.
I
Weird.
have facial hair, so it's totally beyond scrub.
Yeah. With regards to what's coming up for NARAL, February 4th, we have our next Crafternoon. It will be at the NARAL office. It will not be at Holy Craft, but we will be back at Holy Craft in March. February 12th, we have the next Columbus phone bank. So come out and call people in Toledo. February 20th, we have Stand Up for Choice. Next week, Thursday, I have a phone bank which will be in Cincinnati. Monday, there's a docu-teach that's what it is. Yeah, at for Planned Parenthood, where I will be tabling. Saturdays, all of the women's marches, I'll be speaking in Dayton. We'll be tabling in Columbus. I don't have my calendar up, but anything else that I have not covered will be in the show notes. Gabe, you're in charge of that. So thanks for tuning in this weekend. Thanks you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.